There are so many video games that are censored now that you actually have to do research if you don't want to support products that have been altered. But now we're finding out that SNK vs. Capcom SVC Chaos has a disclaimer on boot up talking about how offensive content in the game is, but also there is keyword that's censored. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I don't blindly trust companies anymore. I do so much research into games before I buy them, and of course, there are plenty of gamers now who want to stay away from games that are altered. I mean, if you go to Steam on the Steam curator list, DEI detected or SBI detected, as it was formerly known, there are over 400,000 people that follow that list, and it's not just sweet baby titles anymore. It also extends to games that have been censored by developers, and it will be interesting to see if this game makes it on the list and they actually were lying, but we do know that there are at least key artwork censored, and there is a disclaimer. Yagensha had tweeted or posted SNK vs. Capcom SVC Chaos disclaimer on boot up. I understand having these disclaimers is better than censoring content, not that it prevents it, which I totally agree with. If they were just putting disclaimers, I think they're dumb, but at the same time, it is significantly better than content being altered. But at the same time, being ashamed of what you created in the past never inspires confidence when you want to sell it to us in the same breath, which is true. If they're so offended by content that's in their game, the new teams are, and they're so ashamed of what they had created in the past, why not create something new and just leave that other title in the past instead of trying to re-release it and milk people for their money? When it comes to nostalgia, we know that's a very powerful factor, and we know that a lot of people do buy nostalgic products, but time and time again, unfortunately, they just view it as a way to make money, and they're fine with making a few alterations because they know there are a lot of gamers who do not follow social media and do not really know about the culture war and, of course, Gamergate too. And this, of course, trigger warning says this product aims to faithfully recreate the content of the original game at the same time of release in 2003 as much as possible. Ooh, the offensive content of 2003. Therefore, the content of this game does not represent the ideals of our company, but is provided as is, respecting the original intent of the game, and is not intended to promote or attack any particular ideology or group. So most of these trigger warnings do differ, but they all mean the same thing. Ooh, this content is seen as offensive by somebody, and now we have to put this disclaimer so that, of course, nobody becomes bothered by it, which is ridiculous. They didn't specify what content they're so worried about, but it really just boils down to violence and sex appeal. I think it's rich these companies never actually say what they've deemed offensive because, let's be honest, the content isn't offensive. They're putting a warning like this on the game because the people on the development team that told them it wouldn't be okay with Western audiences, the localization team, or even the few vocal individuals on social media who have complained about these characters in the past. But the people they're writing this warning for don't actually care. The sensitive snowflakes on social media don't buy these types of games, and if they would have supported it when they find out it wasn't censored, they'll decide not to spend their money on the product. So adding trigger warnings just puts developers in a lose-lose situation. They're pushing away the real customers while trying to appeal to this fictionalized group of customers. Now, there is some information that we do not know surrounding this game that I'll get into in a minute, and while they're saying they're not censoring anything, we know that the key artworks are actually very different. As you can see, on the right is the original, and on the left is the toned-down version. There are female characters who are basically covered up by, like, this black border. You've got a Mai who has her chest reduced and covered up with like this awkward white fabric akin to the Tifa censorship. You've also got, of course, Chun-Li standing next to her looking beautiful as always, but they did actually make the female characters smaller. It just does not really appear to be a good situation all around, something that definitely raises a lot of flags, at least in my opinion, especially when you know, of course, the developers. Now, SNK vs. Capcom SVC Chaos is a re-release of a classic action fighting game developed by Code Mystics, but it's SNK and Capcom. And we know over the past couple years there have been a lot of issues with Capcom. I have covered them extensively on the channel. Here are just a few. Capcom sanitizes Dead Rising Remaster boss race swap to avoid racial stereotypes. That was, of course, absurd. We know that they went politically correct. Capcom had slammed modders and claims mods go against morals and public order. Capcom admits localization teams sanitize games for inclusivity, cultural sensitivity, and context. Capcom had claimed Japanese norms can hurt people as an excuse to censor games' localization. And then you get into, yes, a lot of the censorship with costumes like the Resident Evil remakes. Jill's classic costume was toned down. Ashley's costume was toned down. Claire's chest was also toned down. I mean, we are talking time and time and time again about all of these issues, and that's why so many of us do not trust them. So we do not know if all of this censorship was, of course, done at the behest of a Capcom, but we do know that there are many companies who are unfortunately so worried about Western sensitivities and being culturally sensitive that they tone down tons of content, which really, again, just only pushes real customers away. And we've seen this sort of trend more recently with disclaimers in games. We know Ubisoft added a trigger warning to Beyond Good and Evil. Funny enough, I was actually the one who figured this out because I had purchased the anniversary edition and then saw the trigger warning. It says it brings the original experience to today's platforms. The story and gameplay remain as they were when the game launched in 2003. Again, ooh, 2003, the Dark Ages. As such, some characters and cultural references contain stereotypes. Ubisoft acknowledges that the negative impact of their representation, much like the game itself, we keep on learning about our world, our games, and the stories and representations within them. Then, of course, you had Tomb Raider, the 1 through 3 remaster, featured trigger warnings that accuses the game of offensive depictions of people in cultures rooted in racial and ethnic prejudices. But we know with Tomb Raider, they had promised there was not going to be any censorship. It was going to stay intact, but the game did feature censorship. There were breasts that were covered up, and there are certain statues within the game that were also removed, and now there's just like these big hollow spaces that they didn't fill because it seems like they were lazy as fuck. But we're seeing this happen a lot in video games right now. And again, we don't know for certain that this SNK vs. Capcom Chaos title is censored. We know that the key art is altered, and maybe it won't feature any censorship in the game, which in my opinion is the best case scenario at this point. They're not obviously going to remove the trigger warning, but as long as the game isn't censored, it could still turn out to be a game that makes a lot of money and gets a lot of positive attention, but they should address this soon if they want to try to get people to buy their title. And hopefully we get some answers on this. I will be keeping my eye on it to see if it actually is censored at all at release. But for now, that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.